Stop.
Where I worry is looking at stuff like the medical profession.
Yep.
Because that's highly impactful. And the incentives around individual doctors who make up those commissions, the incentives are totally screwed.
Yep.
To where I don't see those people, even the ones who know better. And I have talked to people, and I've talked to people who have talked to people. And I know that there's a very high proportion, and shame on every damn one of you, by the way, if you're listening, of doctors and other medical professionals and people who work in healthcare and administrative roles who know this is wrong, and their justification for going along with it, which they do, is something like, I have a practice to grow.
Yep.
And
I have a family, I have a mortgage.
I know. Well, think about, they've been in school 12 years. It cost them like $80 million to go to school. The amount of sunk investment to get to where they are with the promise of a gigantic benefit on the other end, that carrot and stick hanging over their heads is huge. So the incentives around medicine are all screwed. And there are a handful of sectors. Education is another one that's going to be very difficult, but I mean higher education particularly, but regular education is going to be very difficult, mostly because of the unions. I think it's actually easier than colleges and universities, which are just hosed because the incentives are all screwed up. But I worry about those cultural institutions, but I worry much less about the possibilities around things that are more responsive to voters. Now, I don't know what happens if the medical establishment, like maybe this ends up being like the fiend fire that comes through and burns out our completely corrupt and evil healthcare system and lets us build something that actually might work in its place. Because woke medicine, I mean, this is going to be full scale Lysenkoism. It's people are going to die in large numbers that didn't need to die. Probably myself included. I'm just going to put myself in that box because we're going to go down the road of ideology in place of medical science. And again, shame on every fucking one of you doctors and every fucking one of you hospital administrators who, if you don't know, I mean, I feel for you. I feel for your ignorance. But if you know and you're going along with it because you're afraid, like, I have nothing but contempt for you at this point. Like, don't come talking to me like, oh, can you say this publicly because I can't? No, step up. Like, it matters. It matters a lot. I have nothing but contempt for that demographic right now. Hopefully I will soften back up and like be able to do the good work around it. But I am actually really furious that I found out that the proportion in medicine that are in that position is so high. It's shockingly high. It's probably actually true. And I don't know, the universities are like, the people there like are literally, they got PhDs in being fucking morons. Like they got their PhD and their brain fell out their ear. And so I don't know what to say about college administrators. Like they think like they live in this, we've used the phrase perfect idea land. It's a Mike Maina creation where everything's idealistic and these are just ideas. No, this isn't just ideas. This is actually institutional takeover. And so I don't know what to do about those. Those are where I worry. I'm not afraid to lose if San Francisco ceases to be a powerhouse and Silicon Valley puts itself in tremendous danger by facilitating this and it's on its back porch. Okay. Like Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, they're all massive problems. So if that place becomes lawless and somebody sets their servers on fire or something, like, oh, well, you reap what you sow, brah. Look what you got.
Let's talk about that. So there's a lot there. And so many of those things are like, yes, like get out of my head. So, I mean, even just with the doctors at this point, I keep having the thought of, I'm not sure there's anyone left on the bench besides the willfully ignorant and cowards. And I'm not even sure there's much of a distinction between those two categories right now. And, you talked about they go into school, get all this debt, and they have this promise, ahead. You had this whole thing. I think I messaged you about this in maybe November about the next chapter of the American story. And I have this thing that I've been working on about how we have a fundamental misunderstanding or miscalibration between our expectations of these institutions and what they're actually producing. So we've there's a loss of trust in that the news media no longer informs us. There's a loss of trajectory and like competence with, the colleges are no longer educating us. And there's this whole thing with student loan debt that for some reason the right doesn't want to talk about. So morons like Bernie Sanders are the only voice in the room. And then there's this whole other loss with the federal government of how their promises and what they do not line up. So there's all this, we kind of unconsciously expect these things. We have this picture of the American dream of you go and do this. And it was formula that was crafted after World War II, and it just does not work today. It does not work today, and so much of it is wrapped around higher institutions. I think colleges are the original like little hive mind shimmer thing, and then that spread out to the city. There's a guy, I mentioned this, I feel like in almost every podcast, so sorry to people who who watch me, but there's a guy who I've done stuff with before named Ides of Ideas, and he made this observation. I think it's one of the best observations that I've heard made in the last several years, that cities used to be built around the church, that the church was the middle of every major metropolitan place, even small towns. And that was as a symbol of the guiding ethics and hierarchy of values of those places. And instead, now the university has become that in these cities, and they are the place that guides the ethics and values. And so we have to recalibrate like our expectations, these things. Otherwise, there's that saying, expectation is the mother of all frustration, and the expectation gap is the father of all conflict. And I think that frustration and conflict is what's leading us to where we are. But on the topic of those institutions, so that was one of the questions that I sent you about Tampa. And what I've been thinking about, like, we have these load-bearing institutions in society because we have load-bearing occupations in society. Like, we need just like, it's like, yeah, I'm okay with San Francisco going by the wayside. I'm okay with a control burn here, a control burn in Portland, or Little Mogadishu, as I call it. That's why I've messaged you multiple times, like, hey, if you can get Pete out of Portland, I think that'd be great. Cause I think it's like sucking the soul out of anyone who's saying it's there. But like, I'm okay with those control burns, but we have this problem with the higher education where it's like, we do not have an alternative credentialing and competence facilitating mechanism for these load-bearing occupations. And so I'm okay with a control burn in social sciences. I'm okay with a control burn in like the arts at an institutional level, not art generally in the population, like credentialed art or something like that. But I'm not okay with a control burn in neuroscience, or like, we need competent neurosurgeons and astrophysicists and petroleum engineers and so on and so forth. And so we have this thing where, there's that, in the Bible, a bad tree cannot produce good fruit, and a good tree cannot produce bad fruit. And it's like, well, we do kind of have that with these institutions. It used to be, I remember when I was younger, like, my dad told me I was going to be a lawyer. I was going to go to Harvard and be a lawyer. And so we all have this thing of like, if someone says, at least up until recently, where someone said, hey, so-and-so went to Harvard, that's all you needed to hear, right? It was like, wow, they know what they're talking about. Now we go, what'd they major in? Because if they went to, and even I hesitate to say this, but like medicine or law or something like that, we'll put the things, we know there's a lot of even asterisks next to that. We go, okay, you're probably at least credentialed in something that upholds and helps society. We need that. We need, again, those chemical. So I went to MIT or whatever. We need those petroleum engineers and, all the physicists and things like that. But
no, it's true.
Yeah. But if we went to that same institution and they got a degree in gender studies or something like that, then it's like, whoa. So we have the same institution that is credentialing occupations that we have to have. Like, one of the main differences between functioning societies and non-functioning societies is like, how many of these occupations do they have that are actually doing and innovating, creating, and all this other stuff. Yeah. Like, if we lost half our neurosurgeons and half our astrophysicists tomorrow, and all those things, like, we would not be in a good place. But we have those same institutions that are cranking out and credentialing, more importantly, things that we need and that we want credentialed, but are also creating, like, in credentialing people in these occupations that are actively destroying and seeking to destroy what these occupations hold up. So, I mean, your exact point about, like, I'm worried about medicine, I'm worried about these other things, and the consequences of that are absolutely terrifying to me. Because it's like, we don't have an answer. We have an answer for a lot of these things. And I've heard people say, well, there's so much you can learn on YouTube and you can do this. And yeah, a lot of the things even that I know, I are self-taught in the last 3 or 4 years of reading books. Sure. But I could not self-teach brain surgery. I just couldn't. I couldn't do that on YouTube. I couldn't watch a bunch of PragerU videos and all of a sudden go and work, as a petroleum engineer somewhere. And so it's like, we have to have those institutions, and they're completely corrupted. And now those are the same places where it's like mandating vaccines and stuff for the students and for the staff and everything. Like the video I made last night, I'm like, what's the definition of hegemony, right? We have all of these credentialing institutions, the places that are creating accepted knowledge, the places that are distributing accepted knowledge, and the thing that enforces the accepted knowledge in the government are all in lockstep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what we do about the problem of the universities and that credentialing mechanism right now for those
No,
those occupations.
No, it's super scary. And just to drag you back in time again to 2017 or so, when we were, Helen, Peter, and I particularly were talking publicly about this.
Way back.
Way back, 4 years ago. People asked us at the time, what do you think is going to happen with this? And we were very consistent that eventually this ideology will destroy itself and it will collapse. And what we said in attachment to that is everything it has infected will go with it. Will go down with it. And that the question wasn't, will this ideology burn out? It will. Even the Soviet Union eventually fell apart. It took 70 years, but it will burn out. But everything that it captures goes with it. And so the question was, how do you minimize what it captures? And so this is the position that we're in now. And I don't know how much I know we're going to lose many things that we do not want. It's very Lord of the Rings. You take down the one ring and the three will fail and many fair things will fade. And this is the unfortunate circumstance that we're in. That which has been corrupted by that evil power is going to be taken down with that evil power when it goes down. And so this is the unfortunate situation we're in. Now, I don't mean to throw black pills here, because again, these same kind of thing with the cities, the same kind of thing is happening though. So I spoke with somebody recently, and I want to make sure to put the fog of anonymity in this as much as possible. So this is a very intelligent person who graduated, and I won't specify, with more than one degree from 2 different Ivies. And I leaned over to the guy when I found out that he had mentioned the 2 Ivies. I leaned over, I was like, really? And I named this, I was like, Ivy 1 and Ivy 2. And he looked at me and was like, I'm a little bit embarrassed of that actually now. And then I was on a phone call with somebody who, I will just name the school, is a different person. It was from Harvard. And one of the ideas, and this is a conversation I had, and then I had this conversation with a couple other people from Harvard who were of the mind that they almost, like, they're joking, but there's a lot of truth in the joke. They almost wish they could sue Harvard because they invested so much money and effort into getting that degree that's supposed to be their ticket. And now the public perception of Harvard is clown college. And that's not on them, it's on Harvard for having adopted all these policies. So Harvard has undercut, and you have many, I don't know how many, I don't know what proportion, but it's not a few, from what I'm hearing from these people, alumni of these major institutions who are now embarrassed that they were alumni of, like you said, it used to be Harvard. That's all you need to know. Boom, let's go. Hired, fancy 6 figures. Let's get it done. Going to innovate, change the world. And now you have graduates of these clown colleges, and I say that without flinching. I'm not just making a joke. The Ivy Leagues in particular, all of our colleges are clown colleges, but the Ivy Leagues are like triple clown rated. Like, it's like 3 clown emojis is in place of Veritas at Harvard. It's just like, take their whole seal down and put a clown emoji.
Yep.
That's Harvard's reputation increasingly now. I had a guy ask me recently, is a conservative guy who went to Harvard, and he asked me, how do we recover the elite conservative status associated with the Ivies that we used to have? I was like, we don't. Yep. And he had like a whole little 5 stages of grief or whatever it was through this of mourning. And then a few weeks later talked to me and was like, you're right. And so what you have now is you have an increasing body of alumni who have been alienated from the institution that is their ticket.
Yep.
And if that's happening, that alumni support in those places means a lot. That's legacy admission students. That's lots of endowments. That's like, you have people who are literally, running multi-billion-dollar companies who went to Harvard, who have literally no interest whatsoever in giving back to Harvard, which is Harvard's number one, that's the purpose that's Harvard's country club model.
Yep.
And they're done. They're done with Harvard until Harvard cleans up. And I'm hearing this in state schools as well, where they also have the added pressure of, the governor or whatever in the state legislature. But if they're losing a big swath of their alumni backing, they might have the institution and all this stuff, but the victory that they think they're winning is Pyrrhic. They're burning burning down their own ability. You said, what's hegemony? And you're correct with your definition, but they're burning down the basis for the continuity of that hegemony by undercutting themselves. Again, I can't stress how interesting it is to hear a multiple Ivy grad. And I say, I didn't hesitate. I just turned. I was like, you really went to the Ivies? Oh, man. And he's like, I'm actually kind of embarrassed that I went to Ivies.
Wish I went to University of Phoenix.
Yeah, right. Well, this is the thing, is that sentiment. I wish I would have learned it on YouTube. I wish it saved all the time and money. And you say, you can't learn brain surgery. And I hope nobody learns brain surgery on YouTube. But we do just now have that Olympic javelin thrower, the first Indian track and field gold medalist in history, who learned to throw a javelin on YouTube. Wow. So, high level skill and other avenues to credentials, like literally, can you do the job, show up? And maybe it's not neurosurgery. I don't think that, like with surgery, it's like, I've talked to some people who work in that field. It's like that should be one of the most, like, the equity has no business there. That should be one of the most brutal program. Like, you got to be so strict. You've got like the process, the mentoring process, or the what do you call it, apprenticeship process that they go through that has a residency or whatever. That should be so strict and virtually evil that to make sure that I fully agree. But you're going to find, like, basically people are going to start if it keeps going the way it is, people are going to turn away from the university. They're going to be less likely. I don't know how many business people I've talked to that are like, yeah, I'm hesitant to hire a college graduate now.
Yeah.
So you can give them the credential, but the credential is losing all its value. I'm really hesitant. I hear from people, I wouldn't even hire somebody from an Ivy League. I've heard that from so many, mid-sized company, C-suite level guys. I wouldn't even hire somebody from an Ivy. Like, the strike against them to have gone to Harvard or Yale or Stanford or whatever is so high. I'm just like, again, they have this, but the thing is if you're going to have hegemony, you had better do something responsible with it. You better be a shining city on the hill, or else all you're going to do is burn through. And this is, here's the broad abstract point. And what people need to understand who are kind of wavering around this, if any such person listens to us, these movements, we can just broadly classify them as communist in orientation. Communism latches onto things and burns down their capital. It spends their capital for its own advancement and largesse and burns it down. And that can be real capital. It can get in, and take all your investor money and just wreck your money to build more communism. And that's all it build more communists and give themselves fancy parties and slush funds and corruption and whatever else. Or it can be your social capital. Everything they infect is going to go down too. And so I can't believe that you have a 400-year-old brand in Harvard. Not quite. It's what, 1636 or something was its founding. We're knocking on 400 years. Yeah, 1619, of course. But we're knocking on 400 years of the best brand in America, literally the best brand in America. And in just a few years that this has been public, they have pissed it away to where I hear people say, I wouldn't hire somebody from Harvard. How do we recover the positive brand identification with Harvard from a conservative perspective? I'm kind of embarrassed that I went to Harvard. I wish I could sue Harvard for undermining the value of my degree, because I run into real obstacles in the world. When I tell people I went to Harvard, people look down at me because I went to Harvard. I struggle to get the next position because I went to Harvard. Like, wow. It took them 3 or 4 years this is what communists do. They burn down any equity that you have in, whether it's social equity, cultural equity, or physical equity. They burn it down so quickly for their own advancement and their own blindness and their own hubris and arrogance, that anybody who's looking at what's going on now should understand that dynamic. That, again, this is the abstract point, that you have to understand what you're dealing with. You have to understand. And then, so the people who care, whether it's alumni, whether it's donors, whether it's trustees, whether it's faculty, whether it's whatever, about the students for sure, should all care a lot about the brand value of Harvard, might want to start thinking about course correcting quickly and start creating the pressure to course correct from within quickly. This is just the nature of the thing. This is when we did the grievance studies affair, where people asked us what we thought, and we said, oh, what do we think about the response, blah, blah, blah. And why did you sociology, whatever, something. And it was like, sociologists should be the people who are the maddest at these fraudulent disciplines, and the people who are working the hardest to protect the image people in the humanities that want to do real humanity should be the maddest at these frauds for what they've done to, like, you've discredited sociology, you discredited, and that's not fair. Only a little bit of sociology is bad. People said that a lot. That was the argument. And it was like, well, every sociologist who isn't bad should be super pissed off, not at us,
Yep.
but for the people that we exposed. And it's the same thing. The people who are ruining Harvard, people who have any investment in the Harvard branch should be pissed off at those people. And if that means removing all the trustees right now who have ruined Harvard and replacing them with trustees who care about what Harvard means, good, do it. If it means removing provosts, if it means breaking the greatest academic taboo and firing people with tenure because they've abused the position and ruined the name and brand, good, do it. And the people who are invested in those things should be so angry. Like that person I spoke with who wants to sue, it's tongue in cheek, but wants to sue Harvard for the damage to the brand that they've invested in. Like, they didn't go to Harvard because they thought it was going to piss on itself 2 years later or 5 years later or whatever, 10 years. I don't know how old the person was anymore, but yeah, nobody thought that's why they didn't go to Harvard. They wouldn't have gone to Harvard if they knew that was what was going to happen. So there's, in a sense, there's like some, whatever, all the people who are invested in whatever institution need to understand. And that means you doctors that know better, you need to understand that you're destroying yourself right now. And you should be pissed off at the people ruining your profession, not saying, oh, I have a practice to build, so I have to toe the line. No, you need to be pissed off and purge those people from your profession because they're destroying it. They're destroying, if we lose everything that the respectability is being lost from can be regained by simply removing the cancer and putting people in who aren't going to behave that way. It's actually that simple. And within a few years, people will say, okay, this change of management, it was clearly those people were the problem. They're clearly doing something vastly different now. It's what we wanted to see happening. It's good. It's working. We can start to relax our guard because this loss of institutional trust, whereas in the CDC might be very close to complete, in a lot of other things, it's not going to be, people still want Harvard to be great. People still want California to be an awesome state. People want to see these things come back. And so it's just, I think it's literally in most of these cases, and this is part of why things are being held out. Like, why aren't we already in civil war or whatever? Because people know that with the changing of the guard, if the people that have, you want to talk about stakeholders who have a stake in what Harvard means, like real stakeholders, not some unaccountable goons in Davos, but like real stakeholders, like the people who have Harvard University on their CV, if they're real stakeholders in what's going on at Harvard, if they all start speaking in mass, Harvard needs to clean its act up right now. You're ruining our lives. And it is the lunatics who have taken over the asylum that need to be cleaned out. If that starts happening in every sector, I said it should be shareholders showing up to shareholder meetings. It's mama bears in schools. It should be teachers in schools. It should be every Harvard alumni that can think for his or herself needs to be showing up and complaining to the trustees, the provost, the board of directors, etc. And it's not just Harvard, all of them. This needs to just start happening everywhere, en masse, all at once, or else, you got your Harvard, you think this is going to blow over and people are going to care about your Harvard 2 more years of this? It's not going to happen. So this is who needs to be, everybody needs to be angry at the people ruining their thing. That's kind of the point that we have with the grievance studies. You ruined the humanities majors and professors should be the maddest about it. You ruined sociology? No, they ruined sociology and the sociologists should be the maddest about it. They have the most invested, the most stake. They need to go claim their stake. And I think that the more that happens, the more, again, that's where I see hope. I don't know how much hope there is, but that's where I see it. I don't think Harvard Clown College can be looked at as like its dark years by 5 years from now. If the people who have a stake in Harvard actually, like real stakeholders, which in a company are the shareholders, by the way, show up and act like, if Nike screws up and I have like Nike shoes or whatever, I just don't have to wear my Nike shoes. I'm not a stakeholder in Nike because I have Nike stuff. Right. That doesn't make me a stakeholder, but the shareholder in a company. But if I have a degree from Harvard University and Harvard being a bunch of jackasses, I have a stake in that. And so I'm damn well going to show up and speak up about it. And I think that if people start doing that basically everywhere where they do actually have a stake and they have skin in that game, and including bringing lawsuits when it's appropriate. I don't know, you can sue Harvard for ruining their brand, but maybe some creative lawyer might be able to do something with that. I think that that kind of stuff needs to start happening, and needs to start happening now, and needs to start happening civilly, peacefully, not violence. We're not going to go burn down Harvard or something. It's nothing like that. But maybe do show up and like put a big sticker of the clown emoji right over their Veritas seal. Like, do it. Like, why not? It's what it deserves. Take a picture, put it on social media. I would love to go to Boston and do that tomorrow. Just giant clown poster, Veritas. Yeah, my ass.